therapists say everything's gonna be alright.
The following is paid for by IMIC Incorporated.
The Cure with Aimee Cabo is brought to you by IMIC Research. Life can bring many difficult situations: domestic violence, addictions, poverty, and even sexual abuse by your loved ones. Welcome, Aimee Cabo and The Cure.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. This is The Cure, and I'm your host, Aimee Cabo. This is 880 The Biz, and you can download the app at 880 The Biz. Actually, the app is 880 AM The Biz, and you can listen to us online at www.880thebiz.com. Also, you can listen to us through Alexa and through iHeartRadio. Alexa will also play 880 The Biz for you. This is The Cure with Aimee Cabo. I have with me today my husband, Boris Nikolov, since
Hello.
we do everything together. How are you, Boris?
Great.
And for those that are not familiar with this show we mainly talk about trauma and healing. We look for different ways and different methods, and we try to research different ideas to see how we can possibly help those who are hurting. As for me, I went through all kinds of abuse, and therefore I can share my experiences and how I've been able to succeed and how I've made it in life. But I believe there's others that could also add to this, and others that can give us ideas. And also I wanted to provide a platform where survivors can learn from one another by speaking to each other and talking and bringing in periodically professionals in the field that could also give some insight. And later on, we can also open up the lines should you guys have any questions or you guys want to share your personal story. But today, we have a very special guest, and her name is Tracy Malone. She has a podcast, and she deals with a very specific kind of trauma, very specific kind of abuse. As you know, there's many different kinds. And this has to do with narcissistic abuse. And she is the Narcissistic Abuse Support that I know of. And are you with us, Tracy?
Yes, I am.
Tracy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, please?
Sure. I am a survivor that learned about narcissistic abuse and learned that I've been surrounded by it my whole life, but didn't learn until I was 56 years old. So I decided to educate the world. How could I have made it that far and been so enmeshed and surrounded by these people without anyone ever raising a red flag to me? So I built a website, a YouTube channel, and done a podcast, and I help people all over the world by coaching them through these difficult times.
That's wonderful. And let me just give our listeners a little bit of the background. I did an interview with you because coincidentally, I did experience narcissistic abuse. My mother, who's a neurologist and a genius, she was narcissistic, and she believed that she was always right and that God could talk to her through the Bible, and that she could see everything that's happening. And coincidentally, because of that, I subconsciously chose a man that was narcissistic as well, which is the father of my daughter, my first daughter. And he took me through about 14 years of custody battles. It can be something that's very difficult. One of the things that I found about narcissistic mothers is something that I found that's very interesting. It reads, narcissistic mothers teach their daughters that love is not unconditional, that it is only given when the child behaves in accordance with maternal expectations and whims. As adults, these daughters have difficulty overcoming feelings of inadequacy, disappointment, emotional emptiness, and sadness. They may also have fear of abandonment that leads them to form unhealthy romantic relationships, as well as a tendency to perfectionism and unrelenting self-criticism, or to self-sabotage and frustration. Dr. McBride. And it makes a lot of sense because I am a little bit of a perfectionist, and also my brother, the only way that my mother would show him any love was whenever he told on me and got me in trouble. And I remember getting beat almost every day, but that's the only way my brother received love. And it's so interesting to run into that article. What has been your experience, Tracy?
Well, I also had a narcissistic mother. I did not know that she was narcissistic until a few months after she passed, but suddenly every single pattern of our crazy childhood was explained. Just the behaviors and the way she triangulated me and my two sisters to never stand together, if you would. She kept us apart. She could only love one of us at a time. She could only express any kind of accolades to just one at a time, which let the other ones be jealous and angry, and created this dynamic that, 50 years later, none of the sisters talked to one another because she was always pitting them against each other and telling them lies about the others behind their backs. So having a narcissistic mother really does set you up to think that this is normal love, that this kind of behavior is just something that you have to deal with. And that is so often why daughters and sons of narcissistic parents end up in a relationship being abused by another narcissist.
I can see that they're also very controlling. We were 9 children, and both my parents were doctors. Actually, my stepfather was going to medical school to become a pediatrician, and we didn't know aunts and uncles or grandparents or cousins. It was just us, and that's the way my mother wanted it. And my mother had her favorites, her spies. My brother that she only loved when he told on her favorite, that would be her spy also. And people thought we were the perfect family because the kids were so well behaved. But little did I know it's because most of us feared our mother. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I learned what kind of mother not to be. And although I must admit, wouldn't you agree that our kids are a little spoiled, Bobby? I mean, but, I tell them at least they're not afraid of us. So that's my consolation. We
overcompensate for how we were treated, and we don't want our children to raise this way. So very often we will coddle them and make sure they know they're loved. And my mother used to yell at me that I loved my son at the age of 2 too much. And she was almost jealous of our relationship, and she tried to break it apart by, telling me I was doing it wrong, when in fact I held my course and have a wonderful child as a result, just to not be like her.
Yes, it can be very difficult, I have to tell you. And with my mother, I tell you, when she lost her temper, it was a lot of screaming, and it was very scary. But scarier, I think, was when I met my daughter's father, my first child's father. I did not know that being a narcissistic person can make you violent. Although my mother was that way, I did not know that the man that was supposed to love me was that way as well. And I lost my first pregnancy as a result. But this person was very controlling. My daughter's father was very jealous. I could not work anywhere if the manager was a guy. He would patronize me, make me feel small. And he always looks for excuses for his behavior. He was never wrong. And he would try to control my every aspect, how I dressed, where I was going. I had to answer to him where I was every minute of the day. And I just realized that sometimes, of survivors, they subconsciously find someone like their abuser. And it happened, at least that I know of, to two of us. Our first choice wasn't the right one, but thank God our second choice was. I never married the first one, but the
Just
second
for the
one.
record, I'm the second choice. Okay.
The second one, we've been married for 18 years. This one's successful.
Okay, thank you.
But
Yeah.
well, what were your parents like, Boris? Tell us.
Oh, no, I'm not here. I'm
Was
just
your
like-
life so eventful?
No, I'm not at all. You guys talk about, I'm just helping out here. I'm fine.
Well,
Tracy, would you like to share something else?
Who, me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yes, for me, having that narcissistic mother really did set the platform for me to normalize this type of behavior and always fight for her love and always be, hoping to be the golden child and working towards that, but knowing that at any moment, I could be dropped and back into the pit of, you're not good enough, or I'm too busy to take your phone call. And I really began to believe that that's the way love was. And I married it twice.
Wow.
And so I didn't learn the lesson because, again, all my friends certainly vetted my new husbands each time to make sure they weren't crazy, but no one ever said, hey, look this up. And until the day that the boyfriend I was dating, which is after the marriages, I dated him for 2.5 years, and he called the police to have me arrested when I came to forgive him for sleeping with 2 other people.
Wow.
And so it was the day after I got out of jail, that horrific 24 hours, someone said, he's gaslighting you, go look that up. And it's like an onion had opened up, because I learned about them, I learned about the boyfriend, the husband, everything came into focus. And I want to encourage your readers, your listeners, to really look this stuff up, understand what the red flags are, because even after they display a red flag, this charming behavior that sweeps in generally that confuses you, and you're like, wait, did that just happen? And then like all of a sudden they're your best friend again, and you're just like sitting there dumbfounded, and it gets worse. Abuse keeps on getting worse unless you learn and understand it.
Well, basically, if your life is chaotic and there's no peace in your life, something's wrong. There's a narcissistic person. And my mother, being the boss, the one who wore the pants, she basically controlled everybody, including my stepfather, who was passive-aggressive. And it was always very scary because she was always controlling everything that we did. And so I always, in my house, all I want to know, I don't want screaming every day. I don't want the memory of that. All I want is peace. That's all I ask for. Continuously looking for peace.
There is peace in Christ when we learn of Him. Feel the love He felt for us when He bore our sins. Listen to His words, let them come alive. If we know Him as He is, there is peace in Christ. He gives us hope when hope is gone. He gives us strength when we can't go on. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ.
There is peace in Christ when we walk with Him through the streets of Galilee to Jerusalem. Men, the dry the tear-filled eyes. When we live the way he lived, there is peace in Christ.
He gives us hope when hope is gone. He gives us strength when we can't go on. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ. Hope when hope is gone. He gives us strength when we can't go on. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ.
And now we continue with Aimee Cabo and The Cure on 880 The Biz.
Welcome back to the show. This is, for those that are just tuning in, this is The Cure, and I'm your host, Aimee Cabo. You're listening to 880 The Biz. Today I'm joined by Boris Nikolov and Tracy Malone of Narcissistic Abuse Support. And we've been discussing some of the symptoms of narcissistic abuse, of which we personally have experiences, right? Right, Tracy?
Absolutely.
But, I played that song because that's how I was able to survive this. Even though my mother taught me that God was a punishing God and that if we had trials and tribulations, it was because it was a test. And if we passed the test, we showed God that we were worthy. And when my older sister became the black sheep of the family, she was called the devil. And we knew not to talk to her. So I took the good things out of that, but I didn't believe everything. I didn't believe God was like that. I believe that God was a much kinder God, that he would not test us. Why should he test us? Doesn't he already know the future? Why does he need to test us? I think God is just there to support us. The devil tries to bring us down, but God helps us. He shows a way, and that's been the secret to my success. That's why I call this show The Cure, because for me, love was the answer to my every problem. If my husband didn't love me unconditionally, I don't know where I'd be today, because let me tell you something, he's really dealt with a lot, haven't you, honey?
Oh, yeah.
It hasn't been
It was
easy.
fun.
Tell us your secrets. How did you do it?
Oh, that's a very good question. I guess I have a lot of patience.
Well, that's what I asked for this Christmas. A little bit more patience and what? Self-discipline.
Oh, I need that. So, Tracy, I was looking into your website. You have a lot of interesting things there. So, you're helping a lot of people, looks like. So, do you think that the narcissistic abuse is prevalent only in the United States, or it's something that happens all over the world?
Oh, sadly, it is all over the world. And I get coaching clients from literally all over the world. I have about 125 countries that come to my website. And I have a Facebook group as well with about 6,000 members. And I recently posted a post around the holidays and just said, hey, guys, where are you from? And within a few minutes, I had about 350 people all sharing where they were from, and it was mind-boggling. Probably 15 or 20 right there at that moment from Australia and England and Africa. I've coached people in Dubai, and what I think is happening, and I've been working with a woman in Germany. We have on my YouTube channel, she's got a YouTube channel there, and we're trying to cross-educate and trying to help each other inform our own audiences. So what's happening in the United States is, from what I understand in all these people I've spoken with, is that we have more books on it. We have more people getting on YouTube and picking up a camera and talking about it. So it seems a little bit U.S.-centric when you go on and Google something. But these books have been around for a very long time, and it is the core of many types of abuse. It starts with emotional abuse, and while we might not be able to identify a person as a narcissist, in the technical and medical way, because we aren't interviewing them and we're not, a psychiatrist that would be able to possibly, determine that factor. We can look at the behaviors. The behaviors are all similar, and I have a great red flag checklist for people. And it doesn't have to be that it was your parent. It doesn't have to be that you were married to them. It could be someone that is a friend or someone that you work with. So, narcissists have jobs, and they abuse people in them. So those people become victims as well. And, even having a friend that has treated you extremely badly and followed these kind of things on the checklist, these behaviors, it hurts just as much as it being your mother or your husband.
Well, it's important that people become aware of this, because how long did you suffer the narcissistic abuse before you realize this is not something that's right? And I believe that the more that we come together and we talk about it, the more that people are aware of what's going on, and they realize maybe what a problem in their life, if possible, we may be helping others. But I believe that narcissism is a hallmark of emotional abuse. I think that in emotional abuse, there is a lot of narcissistic abuse. And that's been my experience anyway in my life. So that's...
Yeah. And there's things that make us really vulnerable victims. And that's something that all victims need to really understand. That yes, these narcissists are out there and they're standing next to you in the line at the supermarket, but there's vulnerabilities that make us really good targets, and we need to learn that. We need to understand what a boundary is, because many victims are not great at setting boundaries. They weren't empowered with that as a child. Were you? Were you taught how to set a good boundary by your mother who was abusing you?
I didn't have a good example of parents at all.
Yeah,
I had to learn it as I went along.
Yeah, and that's why we're targets, is that we walked on eggshells our whole childhood, and we just want to make people happy. We become people pleasers, codependents. We want it all to be nice, and we work really hard with someone. But if the person is an abuser, that's a perfect way for them to find someone. With your story and with what you've gone through, they can identify that you might let them cheat 15 times before you ever kick them out, because you've done it before. So our story gives our vulnerabilities away, and we have to learn what they are so that we can not display them unless someone's earned the right to hear them.
Tracy, besides being a wonderful source of information, and I'm really grateful for that, can you explain to some of us what a coach is? I'm familiar with a business coach, and I've heard of life coaches, but some of us may not know what a coach is. What does it entail, and how can people get in touch with you? I know that you do podcasts. What other services do you offer?
So, my website is the core, so you can go to narcissistabusesupport.com, and from there you can actually click a button to get into my Facebook group and get resources and get help right away from people. As a coach and someone that works with clients, I can help them sort of identify, was this a narcissist? Are these behaviors that I've been experiencing, and get them on the right path to their own recovery. So, everyone's recovery journey is different because our childhood was different. And so, we might need to learn boundaries. We might need to learn, all kinds of other things, like learn about abandonment, learn about what pains were our vulnerabilities. So that's how I help people. And again, you can find all that information as well as a support, checklist to go, oh my goodness, that's, and I love to tell people if they have a friend that's going through this, give them the red flag checklist and go, does this sound like what's happening to you? Because then this aha moment happens and they can then open the door to healing. And it's a terrible thing to call yourself a victim. But I find that I didn't for 56 years, I didn't want to accept that I was a victim of anything. I wanted to make it on my own and be strong. But until I learned that I was a victim, I could then begin to heal. And it's hard to say, oh my gosh, I've been in an abusive relationship. But once you are, you can heal.
Well, for us survivors, we still have to struggle with overcoming the feelings of inadequacy and disappointment and emotional emptiness and sadness and all these things that Dr. McBride talked about and self-criticism. And I try to share with others how I was able to do it. I looked into the internet and I read a lot of things, but mostly I started with prayer. That's where I got my strength. And because we have narcissistic mothers and we can have that characteristic of perfectionism, I started to study myself and I realized that I do get frustrated at times when my reactions are not exactly normal. Maybe they're a little more exaggerated. I'm more disappointed or more frustrated. So now I've made a conscious effort to nip it at the bud. If I start to get upset, I start to get really calm. In fact, I make it a challenge to see if I'm actually that powerful. And then when I'm able to do that, I'm really very proud of myself. I've learned that I'm responsible for my own happiness. Nobody can make me happy, nor can I change anybody else. It's a conscious decision that I have to make. I have to move forward. I have to believe I'm strong, and I have to believe that I can carry on. And when we come back, we'll share, if you don't mind, Tracy, sticking around a little longer, we can give some more ideas how we can deal with these things.
And now we continue with Aimee Cabo and The Cure on 880 The Biz.
We are back and welcome to the show. This is The Cure and I'm your host, Aimee Cabo. We are talking today about narcissistic abuse, and we have a wonderful lady, Tracy Malone, joining us today, along with Boris Nikolov, who doesn't have any experience of narcissistic abuse, but that's okay. He's good for emotional support. And Tracy, we were talking about different ways that we can empower people, that we can find different ways to overcome these feelings of emotional emptiness and one is self-criticism and self-sabotage and frustration. You think that you have to go through something major to suffer those consequences, but no, just somebody who's narcissistic, who has controlled your life, can cause that. But one of the things that I've noticed is that I find a lot of strength in prayer, like a prayer that I liked that I call Good Morning, Lord. It's a prayer that I believe helps me. I hope that it will help you. I hope that this prayer, Good Morning, Lord, will help you as it has helped me.
Thank you for a new day. Thank you that your compassion is renewed every morning. Great is your faithfulness and your steadfast love, O Lord. I don't know what all is going to happen today and how much I'll get done, but you do. So I give this day to you. Fill me with your Holy Spirit, Father. Energize me for your work, because you know how tired these bones are. Awaken me to the wonder of your salvation, and quicken my spirit to the reality of your work in my life. Lord, my mind is filled with creative ideas, but they're all jumbled. Holy Spirit, come and hover over my mind like you hovered over the waters at creation, and speak order out of the chaos. Help me to cease striving and to trust that you will give me all I need today to do the work you've given me to do. You will be faithful to complete the good work you've started. And as I step out into my day, I declare your sovereignty over every area of my life. I entrust myself to you and ask that you use me however you see fit. This day is yours. My body is yours. My mind is yours. Everything I am is yours. May you be pleased with me today. Amen.
It's funny because I was once interviewed by somebody who had a college audience, and he said, okay, tell us your secrets and tell us what you've been through and how you made it, but do not mention God. And I said, I don't know how to do that, but I'll try. Nonetheless, I did mention God. But just to let you know, that's the only reason why I believe I made it, because even though I am responsible for my own happiness, what if I don't love myself enough to want to make myself happy? Then what? I believe that if God loves us no matter what, unconditionally, isn't it worth the fight? Aren't we worthwhile? If he loves us, shouldn't we love ourselves? And that is the promises that God has given us, that he will always love us, that he will always be there for us. So Tracy, tell me, you've talked to a lot of people. What are some of the things that have left an impression on you of different methods that people have used to try to overcome the maleffects of the narcissistic abusers in their life?
Well, I think an important part for recovering people is to find community, because our friends and our family very often don't understand and sort of tune us out after a while. So finding community, finding a support group, getting a good therapist or a coach, starting the journey that is going to be exclusively your journey, and looking at all your own accountability to just understand how what you didn't know. That's your accountability. If only that. I didn't know what this was. I didn't know how to fight it. I didn't know how to be strong and learn your weaknesses and understand what boundaries are. Understand abandonment wounds that you've suffered from a narcissist in your life, because left untreated, those wounds carry over to the next stage and the next person. And until we really dig deep and do the work to understand the trauma that this has caused us, we aren't going to be able to heal. So finding community is a really big thing. And I have 2 local support groups here in Colorado, and I have a list of about 250 from around the country. Most of these are free, and people can go in and find someone else, find a new friend that gets what they're talking about, and they feel less alone. For me, I did turn to God, and my mother always had this sort of fake religious belief in her that she never supported. She never brought us to church. I never went to church with her in my entire life, but she would pretend she was very religious to people when it was appropriate. But
they tend to use
found
God
it afterwards. Yeah, I found God, and I never felt alone again. I felt I was stronger, and I always knew that he had my back. And as I make my YouTube videos and I reach my podcast audience, I feel like God is the words coming out of my mouth. Yes, I've read hundreds and hundreds of books and talked to experts from all over the world, but it's God coming through me, like that prayer that you just read. I almost got emotional listening to it. And I say the same thing every morning, just use me to deliver your message. Show me how I can help people that were suffering like I can. So be passionate and listen to your heart and find God. Go and find comfort in that, because you aren't alone if you've got God next to you.
Tammy, an abuse survivor who's an incarcerated woman, she said it best. She said, and I quote, "No life is too ruined for God to restore." And that's true. No life is too ruined. And the thing is that you have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you're capable and that you can do it. What we can do is limitless, because if with God and through God all things are possible, then who are we to say what our limitations are? Anything is possible. And we don't have to be broken as long as we realize what's wrong and what's hurting, and we face the situation. We accept our faults, then we can try to work on it. And every day is another day to practice. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. God will forgive you over and over again. And every day is just another day that you have to rewrite history.
So I don't know, I guess, a lot about narcissistic abuse, but do you think, Tracy, that will lead to PTSD and depression? Or probably can?
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. The victims of this type of abuse, depending on, again, parents, relationship, marriage, co-parenting, the things that they're experiencing are so off the charts and unreal that someone that they loved and trusted has betrayed them, has lived this fake life with them. And, you know, they might have had some physical abuse. They might have had some sexual abuse. In the end, almost all of them that have been in a relationship experience financial abuse. And just this need for them to be right above all truth. They pretend and they hurt people. So PTSD is like the number one indicator. And sadly, most doctors don't really look at this kind of abuse. They think
Correct.
a PTSD
That's what I was
person
talking about,
is in
because
a war.
They're
like in a war. You're not in a war. I'm not going to say you have PTSD, but it is the same symptoms. It is the same things. And doctors, my doctor, treated me. Here's some antidepressants.
Right.
Here's some anti-anxiety. Oh, you can't sleep? How about sleeping pill? And, that's all they knew. And when I actually went back to my doctor to get off of these things, I said, I just found out about this narcissistic abuse and it explains my whole life. And I'm like, I have a hope now. And he was like, oh, good, because, he didn't get the PTSD thing, but it makes someone walk into a room and forget where they are. Why did I walk here? What am I doing? They can't sleep at night. They are depressed, of course, because this is so confusing to them. So I think the PTSD is a huge part of the damage that happens when you're in this kind of relationship.
Right. I was just only asking because exactly that's the point I wanted to make, that a lot of doctors won't actually diagnose you or actually refer you to a specialist that might help you with the underlying abuse or narcissistic, whether emotional, whatever. You just, so I'm a doctor, but sometimes you don't find the right treatment. So maybe that's why people need to look for other venues, not only the medical doctor. I don't know what Aimee says.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have gone through everything from acupuncture and holistic things that when you have PTSD, your adrenal system completely shuts down. I was in complete adrenal failure from not getting sleep, not wanting to eat, walking in circles. Just the whole thing just put my body into a major fail. And again, the regular doctors were like, "Here's a pill," and I was like, "I don't want that." So I went to natural doctors, and I built up with herbs and vitamins that system so that I could finally find hope and heal.
Good.
Well, where I got this article about narcissistic mothers by Dr. McBride, there's a website that he notes. It's www.thisischildabuse.com, and that website may have a lot of information about this subject matter for those
Dr.
that
Carol
are not very
McBride
familiar.
lives here. She lives here in Colorado, so she came to one of my support groups.
How funny.
And,
what a small world.
She is like an amazing, I mean, she has a book called Will I Ever Be Good Enough? That if anyone is dealing with a narcissistic mother, go get that book, because it was the most validating thing in all of the hundreds of books I've read, because that answered the piece of the puzzle of why me? How did I get this way? How did I become vulnerable? Her book is the Bible on learning about this.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, I can really relate to that, because in my life, I have dealt with that and I have struggled with that. And guess what? I was good enough for a lot of things, but I always question myself. How can I be good enough? How is this possible? And I can understand that. It's kind of hard for old habits to die, but you have to convince yourself that that's a consequence, that's a symptom of what happened. And just try to convince yourself, tell yourself, of course I'm good enough. Of course I can. Remind yourself of other things that you've been successful about. Talk to somebody who will encourage you, who lifts you up, not somebody who brings you down. Choose your company wisely, because sometimes people that have narcissistic mothers, they run into friends who are controlling, and the environment can become that too. But most importantly, stray away from that. Don't become that person. Don't let what's happened to you or what somebody has done or anything that somebody has said or done to you change who you want to be, who you should be, who you know you could be. And for children who have narcissistic parents, that's a very difficult thing to do. So, like you said, Tracy, a good support system is very, very important. But Tracy, you've been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And now our listeners have other avenues, other places to go to, and they can listen to your podcast, they can reach you at your website, they can buy Dr. McBride's book or go to the website. It's wonderful. The more of us coming together, helping one another, I believe, the better. But again, we've come to the end of the show again, another close. And I want to thank everyone listening in my audience, and Tracy and Boris Nikolov. You guys have been wonderful. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer any questions. Maybe next time, but know that we are here every Friday at 2 p.m. This is The Cure. I'm your host, Aimee Cabo, and you're listening to 880 The Biz.
comfort. My comfort, my shelter, tower of refuge and strength. Let every breath and all that I am, let it never cease to worship. And you lift him up, shout to the Lord, all the earth let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. The mountains bow down and the seas will roar at the sound of your name. And I'll sing for joy at the work of your hands. Forever I'll love you, forever I'll stand. And nothing compares to the promise I have in you. Nothing compares, nothing compares to your beauty, to your glory, to your faithfulness. No, nothing compares, no. Shout to the Lord, all the earth. Power and majesty, praise to the King. The mountains bow down and the seas will roar at the sound of your name. And I'll sing for joy at the work of your hands. Forever I'll love you, forever I'll stand. 'Cause nothing compares to the promise I have. No, nothing compares to this promise I have. Nothing compares to the promise I have in you.
Death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the voice of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring, the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. You have no rival, and you have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom, and yours is the glory. Yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is. What a powerful